France and other nations had no strong rulers. So what Pope said was the last word there. So basically Germany, France and Italy, they were all under Innocent. Innocent III was very, very powerful. When Innocent became the Pope, he at once restored the political territory of Italy that claimed to be given, to the popes, known as patrimony of Saint Peter. Constantine gave the administration of a large area, to Peter. This is yours. And when the popes became weaker, what happened? The princes will come and take away the land. So the popes lost all the land. But when Innocent came, he regained every bit of it. Not only regained every bit of it, he even annexed more and made, Vatican, the large area, came under the Pope, the papal state. But now Innocent regained them all. And the next 700 years, it remained with the popes. There was nobody to challenge it. Innocent made it known to the world that he would tolerate no opposition from temporal powers. He made it to the world that, if anybody will attempt to fight against the Pope, let him know that he will not be on the earth. He was so powerful. The King of England, John Lackland, the King of England, opposed Innocent. And in 1208, Pope placed England under the interdict. That is, that men in all England, could have no church service. There will be no church service, no marriages, no burial, nothing. The whole England was under kind of an excommunicated. The next year, King John was excommunicated by. His subjects were no longer required to obey him. Finally in 1213 he submitted to the Pope. He made the king to write down a document that said he surrendered the kingdom of England, Ireland to the Pope. The Pope gave him permission to rule only at his pleasure. But the land, the country belonged to Pope. There was nothing else could do, because the people were, Pope said, you don't have to obey your king, he is no more king. You can do whatever you want. So Pope's representative was ruling there. So king was helpless. So he came again. He came, bowed down, and Pope said, write it down. Write it down. That the land, the kingdom does not belong to you. England and Ireland belongs to the Pope. You are a vassal king. I will allow you to rule it at my pleasure. So you can see how strong this man was. He was very, 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 very strong, very strong. One by one after another, Innocent was getting the rule. One after another, Innocent had all the kings, all the lords, all the princes of Europe acknowledged that Pope was not only the spiritual lord, but he was also actually basically the authority over everybody. The King of France finally acknowledged Pope as the feudal king, said, okay, Pope, you are the king. I will rule under you. At one time, the Pope even captured the Eastern Kingdom. On the way to Palestine, the Crusaders attacked Constantinople and captured it. That was a mistake actually, he did it, but he did it, because he wanted to bring, after Constantine, the kingdom was divided among his children to the east and the west. The two sons. So from that on it continued. The Roman Empire means there is an Eastern Roman Empire and a Western Roman Empire. Now all those coming kings, they all wanted, the West wanted to capture the East and the East wanted to capture the West, but they could not. Both were very, very powerful. Actually the East was more powerful. The kings of the emperors of the East were more powerful than the emperors of the West. So they could not. But now was a time. So he attacked. The Crusades were on the way to Palestine, and the king said, first let us get rid of this place, Constantinople, and captured it. He set up a temporary Latin kingdom, which acknowledged itself as a vassal kingdom of Pope. So from 1198 to 1216, Pope Innocent ruled the world as the most powerful Pope. It was a mistake made because the rift between the Western Church and the Eastern Church only increased, because all the patriarchs said that the intention of the Pope was nothing but, to get the land and all these things. So that guy cannot be trusted. So the enmity between the East and the West increased. Now there was no chance of a reconciliation, because the king, the Pope made it, the real intention of the Pope was made clear, that it is not doctrine, it is not church, but it is the territory that he wanted. But however, Innocent ruled from 1198 to 1216. He was the unchallenged ruler of the whole world, basically. In 1215, Innocent called a council at Rome. In that council, he said he had two things in mind. Very important decision. I have two things in mind. He said, the reconquest of the Holy Land. I want the whole Palestine to be captured back. Secondly, I want the universal church to be reformed. So this council he has called, and he expressed these two desires. We want the Palestine to be captured back, conquered back, and we also want the universal church to be reformed. Actually, it needed a reformation, because you cannot imagine the situation. It was, the church was in a mess. It had everything except spirituality. Everybody was practicing just what they wanted. Any sin could be practiced. The bishops and the cardinals and everybody was just rotten. So Innocent understood that this way it goes, in the internal degeneration will come, and the whole Roman Empire and the Catholic Church will go away. Something has to be done. Otherwise, the Roman Catholic Church cannot. So what did he do? More than 400 bishops were there, 800 abbots and priors were there, and a great number of priests were there, and laymen there, of course, and 71 rulers were there, and they included the patriarchs of Constantinople and patriarch of Jerusalem, envoys of the Emperor of Frederick, the King of France, the King of England, the King of Cyprus, Hungary, and all these people were there. The council determined on a new crusade, which the Pope offered to lead. He said, I will lead that crusade. The council also condemned the heresies which were in the church. At this time, particular time, there were two heretic groups. One was called the Waldenses, and the other was called the Albigensian heresy. These two heresies, the Waldensian heresy and the Albigensian heresy. It was also decided the severe punishment for unrepentant heretics. Granting of indulgences were restricted. Innocent said indulgences could be sold only in very exceptional cases, and when people had comparatively a moral life, if the dead person was living a good person, faithful to the church, and such people could be given these indulgences, because they, it's reasonable that they were good people. But to buy indulgences for wicked people, oh, Pope said that brings down the reputation of the Roman Catholic Church, because anybody could live any wicked life, and then you got money, then you can come and buy indulgences so that your relative will be free from there. So that sort of thing he had, so early. Of course, they did it when the Sistine Chapel was being built, because they needed money. It was also decided that severe punishment will be given to heretics. Bishops were instructed to appoint competent men to preach, and to provide free education in grammar and theology. The Western Europe, you could count people on your fingers who could read and write. No education, nothing. So the following year, Innocent died, and the crusade never carried out because he offered to lead it and he died. Reform was badly needed at all levels. The priests and the bishops were filthy carnals. They indulged in all kinds of sins. One priest in Paris said, "I cannot believe that any German bishop can be saved." Pope wrote, "The prelates in southern France are a laughing stock for the common man." I mean, they were just living. They all had concubines and mistresses and, all kinds of sin. They were not allowed to marry, but they were allowed to keep women in the bishop's house. That sort of. They were having nice family life with many women. And they were holy men, and Innocent was very ashamed of all these things. So he wanted a reformation. Yes. So what he recommended was, these bishops, every bishop in his area will recruit honest, faithful men who will go out, priests will go out to preach to people. But these priests make sure that they will be good people, living moral life. They will go and preach to people that, you should not be living the way you are living. Moral life is very important. You have to be faithful to the church. You participate, come to the church every week and do your confessions and penitence and all these things. And then also that teachers should be recruited who will go and teach children and others, grammar and simple arithmetics and all these things. So, actually it was a good move. It was a good move. It did a whole lot of good to the Roman Catholic Church and to the general public as a whole.
What are these heresies?
We are coming to, I'll come and talk about it. In little time we'll talk about those heresies. Now, in spite of all these, there were a minority who were, real believers, and we'll think that church was completely apostatized. Yes, but yet there were minorities. Some of the hymns written during this time were very precious. For example, the Bernard of Clairvaux, he has written such beautiful, "O Sacred Head, once wounded," and all. It's believed that this Bernard of Clairvaux was a real believer. There was such other people who were believers. They were in the Roman Catholic Church, but yet they were believers. But their number was just very few because gospel was not preached. The idea of salvation was strange. It is doing just a confession and repeating the apostolic faith and the 10 Commandments and saying the Lord's Prayer 5 times or 6 times a day. Basically that was that. And then you participate in the Mass and all that, some confession, you will go heaven.
During this time also, where was the real church?
Where was the real church? Underground.
There's no history of that.
There is history, oh yes. There is history, We can't say there is no history of it. There is history. For example, you talk to a Baptist, for example, the Baptists are not part of the Reformation. They are not the Reformation church. They say the Baptists are continuation of the Anabaptist, right from the apostle. That's their claim. Is their claim right or no? It's a different matter. That's a different matter, But they claim. So there was this group of Anabaptists, from way up, but they had no freedom of operation in the Roman Catholic, kingdoms. And they could not even exist when the Reformation came. Under Luther also, a lot of Anabaptists were killed by Luther. I mean, Luther means not personally, but the Lutheran church had to do that. That things were so bad, Yeah, I'll come back, about, I have a section on these people, I will wait for some time, who are they, because there is another occasion on which I have to talk about them, how they were handled, so I will do both. So the Pope actually encouraged people to come forward and for the Reformation movement, start things for the education, for the Reformation. One of such people who came forward was a Dominican, it's called the Dominican order. It was founded as a result of this council that the Pope Innocent has called in Rome. The Dominicans adopted the name, actually after, from the man who founded it, and they were called the Preaching Friars. The Dominicans adopted the name Preaching Friars. This was the name Innocent used for them. So what they basically did, this is a group of priests who were, vowed themselves for poverty and simple life. Even barefoot they will go. They will live very simple. What they will do, they will go from place to place, preach to the people about the morality and ethics and about the church doctrines. And also they will start, schools for children and all. So the Dominican order was a great movement. They were the first such orders to be established in the Roman Catholic Church. And these friars, the Dominicans, come from Dominic, the man who founded it. This man Dominic actually died 4 years after he founded it, but it grew very large. The Dominicans took a vow of poverty. They were an order of begging friars. They were not to own any property. They have to go from house to house, beg for food. They should, live very simple. They get their food from whatever homes they beg, and they come back and sleep in the night. That's it, with the minimum. In course of time, the Dominicans acquired great reputation of learning. They established many good educational institutions. They established many institutions and universities. Because of their learning, they came into control of Inquisition. This Inquisition, that is, Inquisition is actually, it's an institute. What do you call this? A court. Inquisition is a court where anybody who teach any heresies, they were brought before the Inquisition. They will try them. They will ask them questions and trial, and then if they are found guilty, then they will hand over to the secular rulers, because the church cannot kill people. The church cannot kill people, so they will decide that he deserves death by burning. Then he will be handed over to the king or ruler, whoever may be. They will take them out and kill them. So the Dominicans were head of this Inquisition. It is this Inquisition that has killed men like, what are the names came? Wycliffe was not killed. Wycliffe's only bones were digged out, because Wycliffe died before they could. The other one who made the translation, Tyndale, William Tyndale, that's a man. William Tyndale and John Huss and all these people were burned by these Inquisitions. They were called before the Inquisition Council, and they were tried, and they were found guilty, and then they were handed over to the king. Henry VIII, only William Tyndale was burned by Henry VIII. It's during his administration. So in course of time, the Dominicans have great, even now they are Dominicans, right? Yeah, there are Dominicans and are there, and they are. And another order was established the same time. They are called the Franciscans. The Francis of Assisi of Italy, he founded it. His father, Assisi's father, was a rich businessman. He gave himself to a life of pleasure. This Francis was, as a young man, he enjoyed life. But when he was 20, he fell ill, dangerously ill, and he was converted. From then on, he adopted a life of poverty and charity. Pope Innocent approved their order also in 1215. They called themselves in the Minorites, or the Friars Minor, a name of humility. That's the name they have taken. The Franciscans insisted upon absolute poverty. They were to labor with their own hands. They were not allowed to receive any wages for their labor. They were to give whatever they have to the poor, that they did not. Every month or every week, whatever money they had, they must give it away. They cannot keep anything. Francis of Assisi loved all creatures. You have seen the statue of Francis Assisi, and in his hands the doves and the birds will come. He loved the nature. And it is said that, he will sing to the birds and preach to the birds. That's the tradition says. He adopted My Lady of Poverty as his mistress and sang to her praises. The Franciscans grew very rapidly and all over the world. So both of these orders, they were the early ones, the Dominicans and the Franciscans, they have done a great service to the church, the Roman Catholic Church. Yes, they have done great, So a great revival has actually happened because of these two orders. Their men went out teaching, preaching, and doing social services. And people had no complaint about them because they were not amassing money or land. They were living poor. Some of them even begged for their breakfast and lunch and all those things, They won't even wear shoes or anything. They will walk barefoot. So, they were an example to people. While the popes, and the bishops, they were all living very luxurious life, these people. So people respected them. Their teaching was accepted. Very much. Their teaching was accepted.
This was under Innocent III.
Innocent III granted them this permission and all that. Of course, Innocent III died shortly, But these people grew, not necessarily under Innocent III, but all the popes that came afterwards, they all encouraged. Because Innocent III was the most powerful pope. Whatever he established, nobody could cancel, change, because he became a very powerful person. That's true in the history of the church also. There are some great men from time to time God raised up, and whatever they have established, they remain. Calvin is one like that. There were many other people, Of course, does not mean that everybody accepted what they taught, but whatever they taught, the teachings remain. Because these people also, the Dominicans and the Franciscans, they were great people. Okay, we'll take a break. Yeah.
Uncle,
Yeah.
was Innocent III a believer, you can say?
I don't know. Innocent III was a believer or not, His name is Innocent, but I don't know whether, No, I'm not able to say a judgment. I personally of the opinion that none of these popes were believers. But now, if I find some popes there, I will ask forgiveness, But I don't think they were, The gospel was not preached. The Bible was not read, by anybody. Most of these popes, they may have a copy of the Bible in their, palace and all that, but that's it. They were not interested in those things. They were not godly men necessarily. But they were concerned about their church, the authority. If the way things are going, something is not done, then they will lose everything. That's what they were, It's not that the people were immoral or these people were immoral. That was not their concern. But, the entropy was far advanced. The moral entropy and all that. So something has to be done. That they have done. Innocent was powerful, very powerful. He had insight. He was able to get the respect of everybody. And he was a strong man. Whatever is the system, if the leadership is strong, it will survive. When the leadership goes weak, the whole system collapses. This is the history of the church is the history of the leaders. History of Israel is also the history of the leaders, Is it either Saul or David or, Average believer, who knows average believer? Nobody knows. They are not the one who set the momentum, the pace. The pace setters, they are not the one. They are always the leaders. So all the time, anytime, everywhere, we need good leaders. So a man who can raise up leaders, he is a very successful person. A good follower you can always find. Wherever there are leaders, there will be followers. But the question is, who is to lead? You take the example of any denomination. When they had good leaders, it was thriving. Those leaders gone, when poor leaders came, it's suffering. The problem today in the Christian world is the lack of good leaders. Okay, we'll take a break.